Hello, welcome to David Galata Book Dreamer. And this week we're going to be talking about the importance of daydreaming. But first, let me introduce myself. I am David Galata, author of Clockmaker, Favored Son, and all the books of the Ganges series, including Stellar Trespassers. Uh, those books would not be possible without daydreaming. Now, Book Dreamer. Yeah, this is David Galata, Book Dreamer. All of my books are based on my dreams. So, okay, what about daydreams? Daydreams are really, really important as well as regular dreams. And let me explain for a little minute by doing a little history. When I was a child, I was often told that I had my head in the clouds and I wasn't paying attention to what was really going on, and I was too busy daydreaming. This was a complaint from relatives, teachers, and others around me, including a couple of friends. As a child, I thought this was very strange. After all, imagination and creativity come from the mind producing imagery, sounds, and, unusual thoughts by following daydreams. I daydreamed very heavily. I also started drawing and painting at the age of 4 and was really into making stories out of everything. If I was playing with Legos, I was making a story. It's just how it went back then. And for me, it was very unusual to hear that daydreaming was completely unimportant. It didn't do anything useful. It wasn't productive. And it took a long time for me to realize what this meant. This meant nothing more than it didn't produce a product that society could utilize. And why would someone expect a 5-year-old to do that? The second thing is that the daydreaming didn't produce grades. And if you're a child in the school system, it's all about grades, test scores, and whatnot. I don't really know if that's a great way to learn, but, I do believe in some amount of testing. I do believe that grades can be used to establish how well you're doing in certain subjects and where you might need some help. But this was really not the way that people saw things then. The grades were absolutist. The test scores were absolutist. If you worked hard, you did well, and that was it. And you were producing a product for your parents and your teachers in repayment for all of their hard work in raising and teaching you. So my daydreams were not useful to this. I would miss information in class often. My notebooks were usually filled with doodles and drawings, and all of those were based on my daydreams, which were quite vivid and unusual. And I was constantly being scolded. I was told by one high school teacher that if I went to college and filled my notebook with drawings, I would be dismissed from that college immediately. Let me go back to several years later, where I was in college in pre-med, and I was learning genetics, and I was doodling in my notebook. And my professor did indeed approach me. He was intrigued. He said, "So what's with all the drawings here? I don't see a lot of notes." I said, "Oh, well, see, this box here is what you were talking about when it came to, and everything that I pointed to in the drawing had to do with his lecture that day." He's like, "Wow, okay, so you're using a visual map to learn the material. Well, if you can keep doing that, go for it, as long as you're actually learning the material. This is the way you take notes, take notes." Well, so much for being dismissed from college for putting doodles in my notebook. I'm not sure where that high school teacher got that garbage from. I think he was probably just making it up. Didn't like me much anyway, so who cares? And these were the myths that were running on at the time. Now, I found that daydreaming led to something very interesting because I had practiced it, mainly because people were telling me not to. It brings out the rebel in me. Nothing like telling me no. And I'm like, really, why not? Especially if it sounds reasonable to me. I kept practicing my daydreaming skills. In fact, they really helped me through a lot of hard times. And I found that when I started reading more and more advanced books, the daydreams became the books. So while I was reading, I wasn't just seeing the words. My mind was daydreaming those words into a movie with sound, with visuals, I mean, it was very emotional. It was very strong, but it was a powerful method of reading. I started burning through books with a higher comprehension than most of my classmates because I felt as if I had lived the books we were reading. The power of daydreams right there. If you can sit in a physics class and look at the mathematics and look at the examples that are being presented before you and daydream how these might work, you might have a better understanding of the principles involved because you've seen it. Maybe within the mind, but Albert Einstein once said, knowledge is nothing at all, to imagine is everything. And this is what he was talking about. He was also a big daydreamer. In fact, the theory of relativity would not exist without the phenomena of daydreaming. Now, sometimes my dreams will give me a great storyline, but they won't necessarily fill in all the blanks. This was very true for two of my fantasy books, Favored Son and Clockmaker. Both of these books were based on dreams that were incomplete, but the themes behind the dreams were really interesting. So I immersed myself with my notes and spent time daydreaming until I came up with material that would fill in the blanks or lead from one section to another. Daydreaming is a powerful skill. It is very useful in painting. It is a way of finding creative solutions to problems. Take a moment, sit back, daydream about it. Let your mind wander. You don't want to go into any particular directions. You want the mind to wander on its own. This might seem counterintuitive, but the more you release conscious control from your daydreams, the more useful the daydreams become. You are giving your subconscious mind access and freedom to run about and pick out the things that it thinks are important. And guess what? Most of the time, what it thinks are important, your conscious mind thinks is important. So that's something to keep in mind too, so to speak. Daydreaming is an art as far as I'm concerned. There is an artistry to daydreaming. You are taking ideas in your head and you're playing with them. You're just allowing the mind to play. And in that play, you will find things that don't work. You will find things that do. Almost like you have a puzzle in front of you and your mind is going, well, let's see, that piece looks like it might, no, it doesn't fit with that. Oh, it does fit with that one. You can kind of do that first and then start putting the pieces together. And this is very true when it comes to writing and when it comes to painting. Now, daydreaming is also the purview of inventors. I don't think there'd be very many inventions in our world if no one was daydreaming. I think most architects daydream. Do you think that some of the wondrous buildings that exist or the architectural advancements that we currently enjoy would be there without someone dreaming about it? We often take daydreams as being meaningless, something that doesn't have anything to do with reality. This is not true. This is not true. When you are thinking of making something new, you have to start outside the box that you've been placed in. The only refuge for that is right in here. Okay? You're not going to find it outside yourself, much like happiness. You have to find it within yourself. If you don't have it within yourself, you better start seeking and building within yourself until you've got it. Daydreaming is something that can be, in some ways, I think, taught, usually through learning meditative practices. When you meditate, you are calming the conscious mind and forcing it to focus on something that doesn't have to do with much, like a mantra or a waterfall or some object in front of you. You're meditating on it. That means you are really shutting down the conscious mind and allowing the unconscious mind to flood you with information. Now, in meditation, especially in most yoga meditations, you are there to ignore those things. You are learning how to ignore the fantastical and bizarre ideas that emerge from your mind. And many practitioners will say, hey, don't worry about what comes up in your mind. That's not important. The mantra is. But if you happen to remember any of those odd thoughts that came up during meditation, maybe they're important enough for you to remember. And those are the ones that you can play with. So in a way, you can almost train your mind to daydream, not by focusing on, say, an outward object, but by focusing inward and ignoring the outward objects, like an inverse process of meditation. You may end up falling asleep. That's fine. I like regular dreams as much as daydreams. And I find that both of them can become unpredictable. I know that sometimes my daydreams become brooding. I end up having a very brooding session. That's okay. That's useful too. That's useful for writing about a character where something terrible has happened to them in a book, or it's great for villains and why they're villains. That brooding nature can be used. Everything can be used. Using the imagination, exercising the imagination, looking at wood grain and trying to pick out the imagery that your mind might make of it is another way of reinforcing daydreams and developing them. This can be done with stones. This can be done with clouds in the sky, the whole thing, looking up at constellations and seeing pictures, or looking at clouds and seeing bunny rabbits. Yeah, that's all valid. These are ways of strengthening the imagination. When you strengthen the imagination, you're doing so through daydreaming. And it is only through imagination that we gain creativity, and through creativity, we advance. We advance with new products, new ideas, and new sources and forms of entertainment, as well as new technologies. These are very important issues for us. I see so many people who ended up being very stodgy, very stiff, because they've been taught that being imaginative is not helpful. They have been taught that daydreaming should be squashed and dreams mean nothing. This is not true. You are throwing away a vital resource. And I think it's a survival resource too. And this is something we should not throw away. The importance of daydreams. Now, I may be biased, okay, in that I enjoy daydreaming. Negative, positive, neutral, it doesn't matter. I like to daydream. Much like I don't mind going to bed and having dreams. My business depends on it. Writing these books depends on the visions that come to me in dreams and daydreams. And now I have created a physical object that I can sell and that you can enjoy. I'm not saying that the daydream or the dream dictates the entire piece of work. That would be chaotic, and it might really not pull together well to be entertaining or educational or both. But gaining the visions of dreams and daydreams and putting them together in a conscious manner to create a book is a vital skill for telling stories that have impact and ask questions and maybe make us think about important things that normally we don't think about. This is what I'm trying to do with my work, and so daydreams are a vital resource. I encourage everyone to dream and daydream. Get yourself a dream journal, have a sketchbook near you, have a little notebook with you, and let's face it, these things all have a little notebook in them. And jot down the strange ideas that your mind comes up with. Write it down, draw it out. Exercise your daydreaming skills because you never know when you might need them. I hope you enjoyed this issue of David Galata Book Dreamer here on YouTube, and I'll catch you again next week. Please subscribe. Feel free to comment. I love hearing from people, and I'll see you soon.